Live streaming is on.
Už to nahrává, super.
Okay.
Tak až budeš ready, tak můžeš.
Počkej. Sdílet. Okay, hello guys. Welcome to my presentation. I will be presenting about developing of pipelines, data pipelines using S-Pipes. As you know, S-Pipes is a project that we develop at KBSS. So the outline is I think that currently S-Pipes in a state that it might be quite usable for you. So I decided to do some simple examples, how to develop, how to deploy scripts. So this will be first part of the presentation. We talk about what is S-Pipes, just to remind, going over some Hello World example, and then we talk about how to develop and deploy scripts. We show examples of complex scripts, and then I just summarize when to use S-Pipes and when to not use it, what are the drawbacks, and future work. So first, the S-Pipes is just scripting language that can be represented as acyclic oriented graph, where each node is a module. This is implemented in Java and parameterized within RDF. Whole script is written in RDF, so the connection between nodes is in the RDF, and the pipeline between nodes, there is some data flowing, and those data are RDF. Input modules and output modules are the only exceptions, because input modules can take something else than RDF, and output modules can generate something else than RDF. So S-Pipes is language inspired by Sparkle Motion that can define such pipelines, and S-Pipes engine is just engine that can execute it. It can be run. It publishes a REST API interface for it. So let's go over some simple example how to create a script. Let's imagine that you want to create script that just outputs one triple based on input data. So you have, for example, first name and last name, and you will generate a triple that is saying the person is greeted by message, this one. I use double columns here only as a prefix, but there is some prefix within the script. So this is a URL, of course, and URL because this is RDF triple. So the idea of script, there would be 4 modules. From the input parameters, we construct person name, so it would be Robert Plant, separated by space. Then we create ID, which we use for the URI, and then we just construct the triple, and return it. We will want to return it as JSON-LD. So in order to create such a script, we need to create file that ends with SMS, TTL. SMS means scripts. Yeah, this is something that came from Sparkle Motion, and I want to keep compatibility. So this is just extension of file that defines runnable scripts. So it must end with this, and it is nothing else, just ontology, which contains additional import. This file is ontology that contains all modules and their description, what parameters they have, and so on. So that's all to create a empty script, I would say. And then you have to implement each of those modules. So let's say bind person name would be a module that binds a name from input variables. So here you can see basically Sparkle expression, but it's defined in a language called Spin. So it's not as a text, but as a Spin language. This is something that I'm planning to remove from SPICE, but it's still there. And so the module has type bind with constant, and it output a variable person name, and this variable come from concatenating first name, space, and last name. You can optionally assign a name to the module execution, because this is execution of module. You could assign the name. Personally, I don't use it that often, only in some exceptional cases. It is enough to have just URL of the module, and everything works fine. So again, this is configuration, how to execute the model. The model is called bind with constant. It has two parameters, output variable and SML value. SML value is the Sparkle expression, and output variable is variable to which the Sparkle expression is assigned to. Another model is bind person ID. It's the model that would construct from person name the ID, which is then used for URL. This is something that sorry, here should be bind with select. I'm sorry, this is not correct. So this is basically alternative to bind with constant, because everything that is done with bind with constant can be done with bind by select. But bind by select can do even more. It can query whatever input goes into this module and use Sparkle select to bind the variable. This select must return only one result, so one binding. If it doesn't, it throws or it shows you warning, but selects one of the bindings, but it shows you warnings. So basically, we could rewrite previous model to this type of model, bind by select, and it is very straightforward. You just take person name, you use Sparkle function lcase, which just make it lowercase, and then you replace space with sorry, forgot the name. So that's bind by select, and we go to third module, which is apply construct. This is basically those three modules that I'm presenting here are in 90% all modules that I'm using in all of my SPipe scripts, and 10% of are some other modules. So this module, apply construct, is a module that creates input data and apply construct. So it generates triples. So as output of this module will be some triples that will be fed to another module. Here is again the very similar way. You can put construct, and here we say that take person ID variable, stringify default prefix, concatenate it, and create area of it. And this is a person. And then you just say, then you construct the greeting message, which is just concatenating hello, person name, and dot. And then you just say person is greeted by message, greeting message. Okay, so yeah, there is another parameter, replace, which is saying whether the input that was provided to this model should be replaced by the output of this model or appended, or it should be merged. So if replace is false, it should be merged. Otherwise, it should be replaced. Yes, the apply construct is most used module, and it has multiple other parameters. For example, it has parameter to execute. It can execute multiple constructs, and also it can execute recursively the apply construct until some stable model is reached. So it creates it merges the output of construct queries, and when it reach stable point, so no additional triples are added to the set of triples, then it finishes. Or another parameter is just to run the apply construct multiple times, let's say 5 times or 10 times. Yeah, so this is quite often used parameter as well, in order to apply some rules without knowing how many times it needs to be applied. The last module of this example is return greeting statement, and it is nothing, just saying that it should return RDF with serialization JSON-LD. So the script is done this way. The only thing that we need to do is to export it. So to basically to create REST API endpoint. And to do that, we just say that there will be endpoint execute greeting. It is a function, and it will return output of this model. So we are basically outputting this. And all this is, the script is done now. And if you deploy it, it will create a REST endpoint that will answer those queries. This is how it can be run. It is Spring Web application. So it has through which it publishes the REST endpoint service. You could put ID of the function and parameters this way, and it is executed. Here is some kind of log. This is the execution of script. This is execution of each module. So bind person name is binding person name, and the value is Robert Plant. Then there is bind person ID, which creates variable binding person ID is equal Robert Plant. Then construct greeting is executed, and the statement is returned. Each module generates some info of what it did, what input it has, and what output it creates. But I will show it in a demo session rather. This is just a very concise view on it. And this is the output. So we set JSON LD, so it generates JSON LD. It uses some contexts by default. So this is how it's done. That's it about a Hello World example. And I will say something more how to develop and how to deploy script. So as we were showing to define pipeline and the connections between modules, I mean order in which they should execute, you can use this smNext predicate. So for example, bind person ID should be executed before construct greeting. To configure module, you always say the ID of let's say module configuration or module execution, the type of the module, and then parameters. Parameters could be complex or could be very simple as this. And in case you have multiple pipelines and you want to combine them, you can use classical import of all import. So let's say you would have library which creates the greeting message. You could just create such a library. You don't have to put it into SMS-TTL because only scripts that export a function needs to have SMS-TTL extension. So you would again import spipes libs, and then you just need to import the greeting library itself, and it should work the same way. This is how actual Java modules are created. We have we have a Maven module to generate all necessary files to define module, and then module itself can be written in this way. We have some annotations like parameter and this thanks to you need to extend annotated abstract module. You need to define and annotate parameters that it has, and then you need to implement one method which is execute self, and this execute self take input graph, RDF graph, and variable binding, and outputs again RDF graph and variable binding. All this is done in Jena. So that's it. You can also create your custom RDF functions sorry, not RDF functions, Sparkle functions, which you can use, for example, in apply constructs or any select, any ask queries, whatever you're using. Here is how to do it. This is a function that I'm using to capitalize first letter of a string, and basically it can be defined by this body. This is additional information what this function needs as arguments. This is just optional to document what this function do. The same applies for a function of whole of the scripts. For example, this greeting. Yeah, here we defined another function, execute greeting. It could be also documented by same triples, as you can see here through those spin constraints. Currently, it is only as documentation. It is not validated through that. So this is how you would use it in Sparkle then. Also, Jenna itself comes with many useful functions. So you could use also those functions inside of your script. The other option to define Sparkle functions is to do it in Java. You again need to implement some interface. If it's function with one parameter, you implement abstract function 1. And here is an example that we use in a project to encode password. Yeah, again, this is Jenna. Okay, so when you develop those scripts, you define in Java those concrete modules or Sparkle functions, and in RDF the concrete flow of execution and configuration of those modules. And then you want to somehow deploy it. The quite common way how I use it is that I create Dockerization of a directory. This is useful when you have, for example, Git repository and you want to just publish all the scripts you have there. So you can do a simple Docker file which imports image and then copy directory you have where you have your scripts and put it into some path. Actually, the Docker image is configured in a way that it loads all scripts. So whatever you put inside of scripts folder will be loaded, and the appropriate REST API endpoint will be created. And then you just build image and run image, and it works on 8080. Another way is just not to do Docker file. Yeah, I'm using this. This is very simple way how to create Docker images of your script. So I'm typically connecting this to GitHub Actions. So whenever anything is committed into repository, I create a Docker image and publish it. So that's why I was showing this Dockerization. Another way to run script is just to do it from image that is already published, and to set up context path scripts variable where you need to include your directory where you directory where you have your script. But now still you need to include some directory where are definition of RDF definitions of modules. This should be eliminated very soon, but it is still required now. Then you can publish port, expose port, and those are just the way how to map your local file system to this file system which is running in Docker. So whatever Docker outputs in log, you can directly access from localhost. So you don't have to log into Docker image and look for the logs or whatever. You could use it this way. So I showed how to deploy it, and now I would like to explain you when it is useful to use. Currently, it is I would say useful only to do transformation transformation to RDF from whatever format you like. But we have support now only for RDF, so RDF to RDF transformation, or to take data from Sparkle endpoint. We have a lot of features like scrolling or retrieving only pages of a query, and so retrieving big data out of Sparkle endpoints. Then we have very nice model for CSV and TSV files. So I would, so if you need this, I would quite advise to use SPIPes, because it is, at least I see it very, very useful. And then we have some partial support for CKAN publishing and processing of ECAR's XML documents. So again, to summarize, if you need to transfer anything to RDF and those are the inputs, it is, I think, good idea to try. What are the drawbacks? Now we really support only RDF. Other formats will be included, I guess, soon, but not working now. I was showing last time SPIPes editor, but it's still not working well. The other option is to edit it in TopBrain Composer, but it works only in commercial version. So I would say that use it only for small scripts now until the editor is available. The other problem is that there is no conditional processing. This can be done through variables. So you could have, for example, Sparkle construct queries and have variable there which would disable it or enable it, but this is not a very nice solution. So conditional processing is useful, for example, when you have this repository and you need to do, for example, migration of data, and you want to say, if this is the state of repository, this is state of triple store, let's say, then execute the script. This is not possible to done. This is not possible to do very easily, but it is possible through those variables. And the other thing is that you cannot reuse whole pipeline only by referencing it. You have to include it. So you have to build bigger pipeline that contains this other pipeline. So if you need to reuse many pipelines, the scripts becomes very big. Again, this is something that will be addressed because you are basically defining functions. So you could, whenever you're creating, whenever you're publishing your scripts, you're creating function, but this function could be used even in Sparkle again. So this way we could reuse it, but this is still not done. So to summarize, I would use it for smaller scripts unless you want to use editor, and only to return RDF. Future work. We already can debug pipelines by querying history or querying last execution. But we don't have endpoints for that, so you would have to do it in RDF repository. Then I'm planning to prepare a set of scripts. So whenever you develop script in a folder or let's say Git repository, you would get autocomplete of your functions. So you could run every functions from Bash with even autocomplete. Also to provide simple Dockerization, and also provide some development production environment that would help you to debug or to really deploy scripts. So those will be just helper scripts to achieve those goals, to execute fast, to create Dockerization easy, and to debug, let's say, or deploy, or a test deployment version or production version. Also, I was saying that we need to include RDF definitions of Java modules. This should be also targeted soon. And another long-term goals are to generate documentation of modules in HTML and have some endpoints to tests for each module. There would be like scenarios how to use it, and you could execute it on HTML page. Then to provide some validation of coding style, how you are creating those scripts, and then shackle support. We have spin support now, which is this. So we are supporting construct, select, ask queries, but it would be nice to. This is not that reusable. Construct queries, for example, it would be nice to even have shackle support and being able to reuse parts of your queries, constraints, and so on. So that's all. I have a little demonstration on within the repository of S-pipes. So on GitHub, you can find 3 examples which are pretty nicely described. This hello world that I showed you, constraint validation example, and Scosify example. Constraint hello world I just showed. Constraint validation example is an example that also shows a feature how you can, for each module, validate its inputs and outputs within the script. And Scosify is just example of script that reuses multiple other scripts in order to create a pipeline. So for example, here you can see that there will be 3 files: identification file, metadata file, and relations. So let's say relations TTL, identification TTL, metadata TTL, and they all will be imported into this script, Scosify SMS TTL. So I could demonstrate and explain all those examples, but I will show only hello world now. If you would like, I can execute, of course, other scripts or explain what's done there. So I will not run it through Docker. Although it will be provided, there will be a link for a script that runs the Docker, and it will be committed on in S-Pipes GitHub repository. I will run it from UI just to show you another way. It is just it is the S-Pipes engine is nothing but a web application written in Spring, and there is a configuration file, config core properties. All those variables can be overridden through Spring mechanism. So, for example, this scripts path I was already showing. So this is the configuration, and I will run it. So I just use curl to execute it. Maybe first thing I do, I will deploy it. Yeah, I'm actually deploying also RDF4J server, because I can log into RDF4J server as well, but I'm not using it in this example. So when you execute, when you deploy, you can see that all your files are loaded and your functions are registered. So for example, here is execute greeting function is registered. And then when you run it, so let's call this curl. Then it shows you every time the module, and even this is I'm using logging with trace, so I have even in variable binding as input variable binding, and what model, what input model it has. So it has input model of size 1. Here is variable binding. We bind person name value Robert Plant. So here you can see that this binding was constructed. Again, bind person ID. You could see input binding. You could see output binding. Again, model, input model and output model was not modified. Then here is construct reading, and you can see that output model has now size 1. So this is way how you can see what's going on. And there is also this is last thing that I show, way to enter development mode, I would say. Yeah, I will rather restart it, which includes also snapshots of those graphs, and it outputs it into files. So after each module, there you will see what was the input, what was the output. So I will again deploy it and run it. And with this option, wait. Yeah, sorry, I didn't do it correctly. One more time. Yeah, deploy and save should work as well, but rather do it like that. So let's run it again. And now you can see for each query, even you can look to the input and you can look to the output of each model. If you have multiple apply construct, you could see even every query. So this is one way how to debug. So for example, here we constructed in this model construct greeting, we constructed this. So we could look at TTL that was produced, and it is this one. So this was created in RDF. The other thing that you could do, you can rerun individual model that with inputs, with those inputs that you can see here by clicking on this, and you can even modify TTL. Yeah, I won't do it now, but you could modify TTL and rerun it. And rerun it to test it. So let's say you're developing a pipeline and then you find out there is a mistake. So you can rerun only this last module. It gives you output in JSON LD, and you can modify scripts. If you modify scripts and you have this option enabled, keep updated, then scripts are reloaded automatically, and this endpoint or this call will execute it with updated script. So this is the way how to debug without any editor, basically, just to click on the link. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions, or I can even show other examples if you would like to.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. And I think it was quite overwhelming, maybe. It's a good thing that we have it recorded, so we can check it again for the replays. So if there are no questions, are there any questions? So I'm stopping the streaming.